This is one of the biggest robberies in recent football history, and this is the last Englishman to win the Ballon d'Or. But just wait a second, this video is not about Mike Owen, but he does play a pretty important part in how those two things line up in the story. Okay, let's rewind to, let's say, exactly 365 days before this. To give a little insight into the football landscape in the late 90s and the state of the club at the time, Liverpool tried the joint manager experiment with mixed results, to say the least, with Roy Evans resigning 3 months into the season. His resignation meant Gerrard Houllier was left to pick up the pieces for the rest of the campaign and build something in his own image in the years to come. In Houlier's first full season as sole manager, the club wanted nothing more than a good shot at silverware and European football, Champions League if possible. As the 99-2000 season was coming to a close, Liverpool had let their Champions League spot slowly slip out of their hands with no wins in 4 consecutive games. Still, with 1 game to go, sitting in third 1 point ahead of Leeds, Liverpool just needed to match whatever result Leeds got and guarantee Champions League for the first time in 16 years. Playing on the last day against Bradford City, who were fighting relegation, Liverpool surely got the job done, right? Well, let's just say Bradford managed to avoid relegation and Liverpool had to start making hotel reservations for Estonia and Lithuania. The complete collapse at the end of the season aside, Liverpool took some major steps in the right direction at the turn of the century. The club improved on the disaster of a 7th place finish the previous season, enforced a mass clear out of players from the dark decade of the 90s, and crucial players like Heskey, Dietmar Hamann and Sami Hyypiä were added to the squad.
In 4 competitions, 3 domestic ones and 1 European one, so obviously we need quality players.
In line with this very direct statement, Liverpool signed 8 players for a total of £21.5 million. Amongst those 8 signings were Marcus Babbel from Bayern Munich, Nick Barmby from rivals Everton, and 35-year-old Gary McAllister from Coventry City, who Houllier later described as his most inspirational signing. The squad as a whole was quietly beginning to shape up into silent contenders after years of being mostly average. In goal, the club fielded Sander Westerveld with Pegay Apexad as second choice. In defense, there was a young Jamie Carragher, Stefan Anchot, Marcus Babbel, Christian Ziege, and Sami Hyypiä. The midfield, which was ultimately the team's biggest strength, featured Jamie Redknapp, a 20-year-old Steven Gerrard, Danny Murphy, Didi Hamann, Nick Barmby, Igor Biscan, Vladimir Smica, and Gary McAllister. And finally, back in the days of the classic
4-4-2,
the attack consisted of Patrick Berger, Emil Heskey, Robbie Fowler, and Mike Owen. Basically, 2 big guys, 2 little guys. Being that this was in an era before the hyper-globalization of the sport, Liverpool spent most of their off-season in Northern Europe and went as far as the south of Germany to complete their pre-season preparations. The first third of the campaign would set the tone for the rest of what would become one of the club's greatest seasons. Liverpool kicked off the season with a rematch against the team that stopped them from qualifying for the Champions League, but this time it was them who beat Bradford 1-0 to begin the season with a win. Despite the opening day win, Liverpool began their league campaign pretty poorly, at least compared to their aspirations. 8 games in and heading into the October international break, the club was in 8th place after losing to Chelsea by 3-0. Nonetheless, they were still good to go in the cup competitions, with an away win against Rapid Bucuresti taking Liverpool to the second round of the FA Cup. Liverpool came back from the international break with 3 straight wins, including a home win against Everton. That game was the first of 3 in 6 days that would test the team's resolve before entering the most grueling period of the English football season. 3 days later, the Reds then began their League Cup campaign with a match against Chelsea ending in a 2-1 extra-time victory, in which Fowler finally scored his first goal of the season after a frustrating start. To close out this week, Saturday then saw one of the all-time Premier League classics as Elland Road hosted Leeds United versus Liverpool in a match that would be a mock battle for Champions League football. Despite Liverpool being ahead at 2 separate points in the match and wasting chance after chance, an Australian by the name of Mark Viduka personally made sure that Leeds was to be feared even with a depleted squad. Viduka scored 4 spectacular goals to win the game for Leeds and end Liverpool's 5-game winning streak. This knock in the chin didn't disrupt Houllier's squad as Liverpool won 3-2 away to Slovan Liberec to go with their first leg win at Anfield and advance to the third round where they would play Greek giants Olympiacos. It meant going into the festive period, Liverpool sat in 4th place and remained in all competitions, yet to face Stoke City in the League Cup and the FA Cup due to start after the new year. As temperatures fell and the league table began to take shape, Liverpool caught some serious turbulence as they followed the defeat at Elland Road with a 4-1 win against Coventry City, in which Heskey scored the cheekiest goal of his career.
When he gets the ball, because he can't stop scoring.
And then lost 2 on the bounce on the road against Newcastle and Tottenham. In between those losses was a 2-2 draw away to Olympiacos in which Alexandris scored a last-minute equalizer to give the Greek champions plenty to play for in England. Still, with the away goal rule still in effect and the famous Anfield atmosphere on their side, Liverpool went into the second leg with the upper hand. This winless run was part of a 10-day 4-game stretch of away trips which would end with a trip to the Britannia Stadium in the League Cup. This match yielded Liverpool's biggest win of the season as they demolished Stoke City 8-0 in a game in which Robbie Fowler scored the 3rd hat-trick of Liverpool's season. December began with a tidy 3-0 win against Charlton in the Prem and a 2-0 win against Olympiacos in the second leg of their 3rd round UEFA Cup tie. Despite a first home loss of the season against Ipswich on match day 17, Liverpool bounced back with another 3-game winning run in which they advanced to the semi-finals of the League Cup by beating Fulham in extra time and followed that up with back-to-back wins against Manchester United and Arsenal, the 2 giants of English football at the time. The Man United game featured the first of many crucial goals scored by McAllister throughout the season, while Arsenal visited Anfield for their joint largest defeat to Liverpool in over 35 years. In a match featuring an all-English cast, Gerrard opened the scoring in the 12th minute before goals from Owen, Barmby and Fowler in the second half sealed a famous victory of the Houllier era. That win was followed by another slip-up away to Middlesbrough on Boxing Day in what was shaping up to be a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of season for the Reds in the league. In keeping with the trend, they won their next game at home to Southampton with a late goal by Marcus Babel, taking Liverpool up to 5th in the table with a game in hand. Liverpool then began their FA Cup campaign with a 3-0 win against Rotherham United, before losing the first leg of their League Cup semi-final against Crystal Palace 2-1 in what would be just one of 2 defeats in the Cups for the whole season. In fact, that defeat was the last for a while as Liverpool picked up form over the next month and a half. A win and a draw took Liverpool up to 4th in the league, while a resounding 5-0 win at home to Palace in the League Cup set up Liverpool for their first shot at silverware in 6 years. 3 days later, Liverpool got their revenge against Leeds with a 2-0 result, enough to take them to the 5th round of the FA Cup. A slow run in the league that saw Liverpool win only 1 game in 6 meant the club rose up to the heights of 3rd before falling down to the depths of 6th. In the midst of this rocky form, Liverpool continued their clinical nature in the Cups as they swept Man City aside with a 4-2 win at Anfield to reach the 6th round of the FA Cup and then narrowly beat AS Roma 2-1 on aggregate in the FA Cup. The Roma tie proved to be as tricky as one might have expected at the time, considering Serie A was still more or less the best league in the world. The first leg in Italy was surprisingly mature from Houllier's team. They played a conservative formation, got 2 goals courtesy of Mickey Owen, and closed up shop with time to spare. The second leg, on the other hand, featured both teams trading blows, Liverpool missing a penalty, Roma having a penalty appeal denied, Gigu scoring a great goal, and Damiano Tomasi getting himself sent off with 5 minutes left to play. The result meant Liverpool reached the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup and, with the final stretch of the season in their sights, The Reds had 3 trophies and a return to Champions League football to play for, setting the stage for the most unique season in English football history. Traditionally played on a Sunday in either late February or early March, the 2001 League Cup final was set to be played on the 25th of February between Liverpool and First Division Birmingham at the Millennium Stadium in Wales while Wembley was undergoing renovations. Robbie Fowler led the team out the tunnel, having been appointed as co-captain along with Sammy Houllier at the beginning of the season. Liverpool dominated the game and eventually took the lead at the half-hour mark through a brilliant strike by Fowler. Still, Liverpool huffed and puffed for the remainder of the game, with Birmingham creating a few chances to equalise and Vladimir Smica missing a great chance to put the game to bed. With just 2 minutes of injury time remaining, Darren Purse scored a penalty to equalise for Birmingham and force extra time after O'Connor was fouled by Anshaw in the 18 area. Extra time saw Birmingham turn up the heat and potentially win another penalty as Anshaw's late challenge was considered to be clean by the referee. With the additional 30 minutes not enough to declare a victor, the match would be decided by the first penalty shootout in English Cup final history. Westerveld's save from Birmingham's first penalty set the tone for the rest of the shootout as McAllister, Barmby, Ziga, Fowler and Carragher scored their penalties to deliver Houllier his first trophy in England, and thus, with 1 down, there were 2 to go. As is tradition, Liverpool succumbed to the League Cup curse by losing their first game after picking up the trophy as they lost 2-0 away to Leicester. That result was followed by a quiet away day in Portugal as FC Porto held Liverpool to a goalless draw to set up another Anfield showdown in the last 8 of the UEFA Cup just a week later. First though, Liverpool had to get through nearby Tranmere Rovers to secure their place in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Just like in the 5th round against City, Liverpool steamrolled their opponents 4-2 and then booked their place in the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup by beating Porto 2-0, with both goals coming in a 4-minute span thanks to Murphy and Owen. A draw against Derby meant Liverpool's Champions League prospects were in doubt as they dropped to 6th with a game against leaders United on the horizon. In what was quickly shaping up to be a season of many firsts, Liverpool completed the double over Manchester United for the first time in the Premier League era, courtesy of goals by Gerrard and Fowler. Barcelona then hosted Liverpool at the Nou Camp for the first leg of the UEFA Cup semi-final, but like the previous round against Porto, a tidy away performance that ended goalless meant Liverpool would have home advantage on their side, while Barcelona posed the threat of away goals going into the second leg. With the fixtures piling up and back in the days of the FA Cup semi-finals being hosted at a neutral ground, Liverpool travelled to the Midlands to take on 2nd Division Wycombe Wanderers with the second final of the campaign at stake. The game produced 3 goals which all came with 12 minutes to go as Heskey and Fowler's late goals were enough to evade a consolation goal by Keith Ryan. Having experienced smooth sailing thus far in the Cup, Liverpool were set to face Arsenal, who had come back from behind to beat local rival Spurs. With a 2-week gap between legs in Europe, Liverpool's next 3 games were in the Premier League. A draw against Ipswich and then a loss against Leeds was then relieved by a sweet win against rivals Everton at Goodison Park, in which Gary McAllister scored a brilliant free kick in the 4th minute of injury time to win 3-2. Although the win didn't take Liverpool up to the 3rd and final Champions League spot, it was enough to keep them in the hunt. The banter and the bragging rights were short-lived as attention was quickly turned to the return leg against Barcelona. The match was as tightly contested as they come, with both teams creating several half chances and ultimately being decided by McAllister from the penalty spot after Patrick Kluivert committed a handball in the box. This narrow victory meant a first European final for England's biggest club since the Heysel disaster. In the final, they would square up against Minnows Alaves, who had beaten Inter Milan along the way to reach their first European final. The gulf in pedigree would mean an easy trophy for Liverpool, right? Well, that question would be answered a month later in Germany. With places secured in the finals of both remaining cup competitions, Houllier turned his attention back to the Champions League chase. The Everton win sparked what would be a nearly perfect end to the season as Liverpool followed the Barcelona game with a 3-1 win against Tottenham. That win was then followed by an away win at Coventry City, in which Sammy Houllier and McAllister scored in the 83rd and 86th minutes to give the club a third win in a row domestically. A 2-0 win against Bradford on matchday 35 was enough to leapfrog Leeds and Ipswich into third place, as Liverpool had a superior goal difference with all three teams level on 62 points. A clean sheet and a hat-trick by Owen versus Newcastle was enough for Liverpool to tighten their grip on third, as Leeds and Ipswich both lost must-win games with just 2 games to play. An entertaining tie against Chelsea, in which the Reds led twice in the penultimate game of the season, while their rivals won, was enough to keep Liverpool in pole position by a single point going into the final day. The final 3 games would make or break Liverpool's exceedingly long campaign in charge. With the FA Cup on Saturday and the UEFA Cup prize match just 4 days later, Houllier's men would have to dig deep to turn their dreams into reality. Liverpool came into the FA Cup final as relative underdogs, playing an Arsenal side that was emerging as the sole competition to the imperious Manchester United of the early Premier League. Liverpool were hoping to repeat the heroics that had seen them defeat an injury-stricken Arsenal side. From kickoff, the Gunners maintained control of proceedings, as Henry had a goal cleared off the line by Enshaw, using what appeared to be a hand, while Liverpool had just a pair of half chances to show for. Liverpool began the second half strongly, as a powerful header by Heskey was saved by Seaman. Once Arsenal regained the power, they came agonizingly close to opening the scoring through Cole and Ljungberg, who both had their attempts cleared off the line. Finally, in the 72nd minute, a failure to clear the lines by Liverpool allowed Arsenal to take the lead via Freddie Ljungberg, who coolly rounded Westerveld and slotted into an empty net. That goal was just the wake-up call Liverpool needed after living on the edge for the better part of the match. With nothing to lose and 20 minutes remaining, they quickly shed the nervousness they had been playing with and threw everything at Arsenal. In the 83rd minute, Michael Owen pounced on a loose ball from a set piece to claw Liverpool back into the game. No more than 5 minutes later, Owen engraved his name in the FA Cup history books in what would be remembered as the Michael Owen final. Latching onto a ball over the top from Patrick Berger, beating his man and delicately finishing past Seaman to give his team the lead, Owen scored the decisive goal to deliver Liverpool their 6th FA Cup trophy. The celebrations on Merseyside were sweet, but the club quickly turned their attention to Thursday with 2 trophies down and 1 to go. Borussia Dortmund's home, the Westfalenstadion, would be host to this year's UEFA Cup final. In stark contrast to the FA Cup final, Liverpool came into the showpiece match with the swagger of title favourites. Fielding a team filled with players that would etch their names into the club's history books, it appeared to be a matter of just showing up and doing what they had made a habit of doing across the club's 61 games thus far. The next 90 minutes and extra time if necessary would ultimately determine whether Liverpool's season would go down as impressive or immortal. The match started in the perfect way possible for Houlier's men, as Babel scored a header inside 3 minutes to give Liverpool the lead. Just 13 minutes later, Captain Fantastic put away a low-driven shot past Martin Herrera to make it 2-0 in the first half. With Liverpool absolutely cruising, they seemed to let their opponents back into the game by allowing Ivan Alonso to pull one back for Alaves and give them hope. The next 15 minutes saw the Spaniards pile on the pressure as they searched for an equalizer before halftime. That hope and momentum were then quickly dashed as Herrera's miscalculation of Owen's approach led to him conceding a penalty, which McAllister expertly put away. Going into the break at 3-1, the team talk for Houlier's quote-unquote boring side was to presumably shut shop and see the game out. Both teams emerged from the tunnel with a certain idea of how things would play out, but it was Alaves who benefited from the fearlessness of being down in the final. 2 goals courtesy of Javi Moreno 5 minutes into the second half brought the trophy right back into contention and forced Houllier to re-strategize without the comfort of the dressing room. Wasting no time after the 3-3 goal, he brought on Vladimir Smica for Enshaw and made a tactical change that saw Carragher move to centre-back. 9 minutes later, Heskey was replaced by Fowler as Liverpool sought the go-ahead goal. Fowler wasted no time introducing himself as he swiveled past a sea of defenders and finished with his weaker foot to make it 4-3 and surely put the game to bed. With just 2 minutes of regular time remaining, Jordi Cruyff rose highest to latch on to Cosmin Contra's third assist of the night and take the game into extra time. With the golden goal rule still in effect, it meant whoever struck first would laugh last. As both sides were running on empty at the dying stages of the cinematic final, extra time didn't produce the clear-cut chances of the previous 90. It would then be in the 115th minute that Alaves captain Carmona was sent off for fouling Smica, giving Liverpool a valuable set piece on the left flank. Gelly would ultimately be the ill-famed match winner as he converted the ball into his own net to deliver Liverpool the match and their third trophy of the season. The win meant Liverpool were the first English side to accomplish this unique treble, and the icing on the cake would be a favourable result on the final day of the season. A 4-0 win away to Charlton capped an incredible season for Liverpool, who qualified for the Champions League for the first time in over a decade while winning everything else on offer. Although Liverpool would win the Champions League in one of the greatest finals in European history just 4 years later, this season would ultimately go down as a reminder of the great heights the club could aspire to even as they desperately sought to return to the pinnacle of the elites.